We are preaching through covenants in Hebrew Scripture, and I don't know if you've been noticing what the Fine Arts team has been doing. They've been putting a little different diorama up here each week and building an acrostic on the wall over there. And the theme for today is the promise of home. But I have a confession to make. I have never felt at home. I grew up in Detroit in the 60s, and as I was getting older and my friends were all starting to learn to play football with their dad, throwing the ball, playing catch, I went to my father and asked him to teach me how to play football too. You know what he did? Well, being from Glasgow in Scotland, he pulled out a soccer ball. For him, that was football. As my friends were being taken downtown to Tiger Stadium to watch baseball, my parents were taking me to my grandparents' house on Sunday afternoon for a gathering of the clans where we would tune in to the Scottish service of the BBC and listen to what was going on 4,000 miles away. It was hard for me to relate with the kids who were my age in my own neighborhood because I was living a sort of syncopated life from theirs. I never felt quite like I fit in. And then at the beginning of 4th grade for me, my family moved to Britain and I was put into a boarding school, and for the next 8 years, the most common question that was asked of me by students and by teachers alike was, when are you going home? That was not a polite question. That was a question that was really a statement that said, you do not belong here. You're not British. Go away. And so I grew up with a foot in two worlds, not feeling fully accepted and fully owned by either one. When I came home to go to university, 1 week after my 18th birthday, I found myself working in the auto plants in Detroit. Talk about landing on the moon. I was the only white person in my entire crew, working to pay off for college and the year to go. And that happened every summer. By the time I finished graduate school, my parents had moved house so many times that I couldn't really say I was going home to visit them because the home they were living in had no memories for me. And so I found myself eventually beginning to realize that if I were going to have any sense of home, I would have to build it for myself and my family. Only I'm a minister in the church, and you know what that means. That means I have served different communities from the Midwest to the West Coast and back again. Hardly a career to build a sense of home. And yet, I know what home looks like. At least in my imagination, I think I do. It's a small log cabin in a meadow not far from a trout stream, surrounded by a wonderful forest marching up mountainsides to granite peaks that are snow-capped. One day. And I hold that dream because attached to that image is a sense of what home is. A place that is safe and that is secure. A place that my family can gather and we can be with each other and let the world outside be all by itself. A place where we are all embraced and known and named. A place where we can find groundedness and refuge and renewal in order to re-engage that world outside. There is something about us human beings that yearns for home. And maybe because of my homeless background, I read the scriptures and the story of the people of Israel, and I see in their story that same sense of displacement and yearning that so marks my own life. We know the story well. We know it begins with Abraham and Sarah and how they are called out of their ancestral home. And for the next 4 generations, their family lives as nomads in the land of Canaan, following their flocks from seasonal pasture to seasonal pasture, and living held in deep suspicion by those people who live in that area. When famine strikes, they move to Egypt as honored guests for a while, and then the blessing that they brought with them is forgotten, and they are turned into exploited slaves. When they are freed from that environment, they wander in the wilderness for 2 generations, homeless, trying to figure out who they are and where they are going. And when they finally enter the land of promise, it is not the land of milk and honey that they were promised. They spend generations clinging by their fingernails in the hill country above the coastal plain, never living in permanent shelters, always in fear of the cities down on the plain, who are Iron Age cities alongside of their own Bronze Age weapons. It's not until David that there comes that tipping point where Israel gets the upper hand, and the land is finally called Israel, and people begin to build permanent structures. And David himself builds the first royal palace, a place for the king to live with permanence. And what he does is he then brings the Ark of the Covenant from its shrine at Shiloh, and he proposes to build it a home right next to him. And of course, any student of political science sees right through that. Obviously, he's moving the Ark of the Covenant next to him as a statement to his rivals, saying, look, see, God is on my side. God is living right next door to me. But at the same time, I think he is tapping into that deep yearning for wanting to be at home, for finally finding a place that is safe and secure, where people may rest, where people may come and encounter God and be grounded. What does a home, or a spiritual home, look like for you? I know I've got 3 places in my imagination that I return to often. First place is one that I visited when I was only 13 years old. It's an old 6th century Celtic monastery on the Isle of Man in the middle of the Irish Sea. A place that is now ruined, but I had a profound spiritual experience there, and I swear I met God there. And I return to that place often in my imagination to be renewed and grounded. Another place is on the other side of the world. I once visited a marae in New Zealand, a Maori sort of compound, a sacred place for Maori. And I remember sitting outside at the Wharenui, which is the most sacred building for the Maori, looking out over the Pacific Ocean and feeling that sense of peace and wellness with them. Third place is the Santuario de Chavayo in New Mexico, between Taos and Santa Fe. An old Spanish mission built on an even older Native American ground of healing. And I remember watching people as I was sitting on the adobe wall in the courtyard, coming and going, entire families coming to pray for healing and wellness and wholeness in the future. When I go to those places in my imagination, I think I am incorporating to myself the best of what church should be, which is a place where our faith is made concrete, where again we are embraced, where again we are called by name, where again we are made to feel safe and secure, where we are grounded in God's presence, and from which we can build memories that are the springboard to our future. I think the best of church is really found there. And that is what we need to be doing in our community too. We have baptized 2 little infants today. We have called them by name. We have embraced them. We have said to them and their families, this is your home. This is your spiritual home. This is the place that is safe and secure for your children and for you. This is the place where you can encounter God. This is the place where you are called by name, no matter who you are or what you have done, where you are embraced. This is the place where you can set down roots and grow, and dream and remember, and build an incredible future. This is what we need to do for all the rest of us to ensure that this happens, that this place becomes that kind of holy ground. Not only for our generation, but for generations